You won't believe what happened to me that day. I never thought I would spend 24 hours locked inside a car with my own grandson, stranded in a place neither of us knew. The heat was unbearable, the silence outside was heavy, and for the first time in my life, I felt helpless yet strangely. It was also the day I learned something about love, survival, and what it really means to trust each other. Before I start, tell me, where are you watching from? Which city? Which state? I always love knowing where my stories are reaching. Go ahead, drop your city down in the comments while I begin. My name is Yiz, and this story is something I never thought I'd share publicly. But sometimes, life hands you a memory so powerful that keeping it inside feels impossible. It was a late summer afternoon, the kind of day where the air hangs heavy and the sun doesn't seem to take a break. I had taken my grandson, a sweet boy of 12, on a short road trip. We didn't plan anything complicated, just a drive, maybe a stop at a small diner, and then back home before nightfall. But life has its way of twisting ordinary days into something you'll never forget. The first mistake was mine. I pulled over in a small town that felt half forgotten, gas station closed, streets almost empty, and the occasional stray dog trotting by. My phone had already lost signal miles before, and there was no GPS to guide us. It was one of those towns you don't even know has a name until you squint at a fading street sign. When I turned the key back in the ignition after our short stop, nothing happened. The car just made that tired clicking sound, like it was mocking me. I tried again, and again, but the engine wouldn't catch. Panic began to settle in my stomach, though I smiled at my grandson to keep him calm. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said. "It's just a little thing. We'll figure it out." But the truth was, I didn't know how we were going to figure it out. There was no one around, no open store, no sound except the chirring of cicadas and the distant hum of the highway we had left behind. I opened the car door and stepped outside, the heat instantly wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. The air shimmered against the asphalt, and I could feel sweat forming at the base of my neck. Inside the car, my grandson leaned forward, his arms draped across the back of the seat. "Grandma, what do we do?" he asked, his voice carrying that mix of trust and worry that only children have. I wanted to tell him I had a plan. I wanted to reassure him the way I used to when he was a toddler, scared of thunderstorms. But this was different. I didn't have an umbrella to shield him this time. We decided to wait. Maybe someone would pass by, maybe help would appear. But hours went on, and the sun slid slowly across the sky, turning the inside of the car into an oven. I tried rolling down the windows, but only 2 of them worked halfway, and even then, the breeze that slipped through was hot and heavy, offering no comfort. By late afternoon, sweat clung to our clothes, and every breath felt thick. My grandson pressed his face against the cracked window, searching for signs of life, while I silently prayed that someone, anyone, would stop. But the road stayed empty. That's when the silence started pressing in. It wasn't just the heat, it was the stillness, the realization that we were completely alone. My grandson shifted closer to me, resting his head against my shoulder. "Grandma, do you think someone will find us?" His question broke something inside me. I had always been the strong one, the one who held the family together, who solved problems quietly without letting anyone see my fear. But in that moment, I realized I couldn't lie to him. "I don't know," I whispered, my throat dry from the heat. "But we'll stay together. That's what matters." We passed the time talking about school, about his favorite video games, about stories his father had told him when he was little. I watched his face light up, and for a moment, I forgot the stifling heat, forgot the worry pressing in on me. There, in that small bubble of conversation, we found a little comfort. But as the sun sank lower, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, the reality began to sink deeper. We were still there. Still alone. And the night was coming. I don't know if you've ever felt it, that mix of fear and strange calm, when you realize all you have is each other. That's where we were, leaning against each other in a car that no longer felt like a safe place but like a trap. And yet, even then, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about being stuck, it was about seeing my grandson in a way I hadn't before. His patience, his quiet strength, the way he didn't complain even when sweat dripped down his forehead. The first night was just beginning, and neither of us knew how long we would be there. But one thing was clear, we had to face it together. The night crept in slowly, almost like it didn't want to reveal itself all at once. One minute the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the next it was swallowed by deep blue and black. The small town around us seemed to fall into complete silence. No cars, no lights, no voices, just the occasional chirp of crickets and the far-off howl of a dog that made the stillness feel even heavier. Inside the car, the air grew cooler but no less suffocating. The heat of the day had baked itself into the seats and dashboard, and the trapped warmth clung to us. My grandson shifted restlessly, pulling his knees to his chest as he sat beside me. His young face looked tired, yet his eyes stayed wide open, glancing at me every few minutes as though to make sure I was still there. "Grandma," he whispered at one point, his voice so small it nearly broke me. "What if nobody comes?" I swallowed hard. A lump had been lodged in my throat since the afternoon, and now it seemed to grow heavier with each hour. "Then we'll think of something," I said, stroking his damp hair away from his forehead. "We won't just sit here forever. I promise you that." He nodded, but I could see the worry still etched across his face. He was trying to be brave for me, maybe, just as I was trying to be brave for him. The darkness outside made everything unfamiliar. The gas station across the road was nothing but a shadowy outline. The little houses in the distance had no lights on, as though the whole world had gone to sleep and forgotten about us. I pressed my forehead against the window and exhaled slowly, watching the faint fog my breath left behind. That I thought of calling out, of stepping outside and knocking on one of those darkened doors. But the truth was, I was afraid. I didn't know this place, didn't know who might answer. And in some strange way, the car, though unbearably hot, felt like the only safe place we had. We tried to pass the time by talking again. My grandson told me about a book he was reading at school, about a boy who got lost in the woods but found his way home by following the stars. He leaned toward the windshield and pointed out the real stars above us, scattered like glitter across the black canvas of the sky. "Maybe we could follow them too," he said with a hopeful smile. I laughed softly, though it was tinged with sadness. "We'd need more than stars, sweetheart. But I like how you think." As the hours crawled by, fatigue began to settle in. My body ached from sitting still, and every so often, I'd stretch my legs or shift in the seat to keep the pins and needles from spreading. My grandson eventually lay across the back seat, curling up against the seatbelt buckle as though it were a pillow. I reached back and held his hand, keeping that small connection between us. The quiet gave me too much room to think. My mind wandered to my own younger years, times when I thought I had all the answers, when I believed strength meant never admitting fear. But here, in this car, with my grandson's hand in mine, I realized strength was something else entirely. It wasn't about pretending. It was about enduring. About facing fear and still choosing to hope. Every creak outside made my heart jump. Once, I heard footsteps crunching on gravel, and I froze. I sat perfectly still, holding my breath, listening. The sound moved past us, slow and deliberate, until it faded into nothing. My grandson stirred but didn't wake, and I let out the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The night dragged on, hour by hour. The heat finally began to ease, but now the cold started creeping in, sneaking through the half-open windows. I pulled my light jacket around my shoulders and draped part of it over my grandson, making sure he was covered. I end the stillness, I prayed silently, not for myself, but for him. That he wouldn't lose faith, that he wouldn't remember this night as fear but as something else, something that made him stronger. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I must have drifted into a half-sleep, my head leaning against the seat. I woke to the sound of my grandson's voice, soft but urgent. "Grandma, wake up." I blinked and sat up quickly, my heart thudding. "What is it?" "There's someone out there," he whispered, pointing toward the road through the windshield. I saw a figure moving slowly in the shadows. For a moment, I couldn't tell if it was real or just my imagination shaped by exhaustion. But then the figure paused, turned slightly, and I could see it was a man, tall and thin, walking with something slung over his shoulder. I felt my chest tighten. Should I call out? Should I stay quiet? The uncertainty made my hands tremble. My grandson's grip on my arm was firm, stronger than I expected from such a young boy. His eyes were locked on mine, waiting for me to decide, and in that moment, I realized something important. He trusted me completely. My choice, whatever it was, would be the one he believed in. The weight of that truth settled on me as the man disappeared into the darkness, leaving us alone again. I pulled my grandson close, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "We'll be okay." Even if I didn't fully believe it yet, I wanted him to. The night wasn't over. And neither was our test. When the first light crept into the car, it felt less like relief and more like a punishment. The night had been long, restless, filled with shadows that whispered fear. But daylight didn't mean safety, it meant heat. The sun climbed quickly, pressing its rays against the windshield until the glass itself seemed to burn. The car, already cramped, turned into a furnace again. My grandson stirred awake, rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand. His small voice was raspy. "Is it morning already?" "Yes, sweetheart," I murmured, brushing his hair back gently. "We made it through the night." He gave me a tired smile, and for a moment, I felt proud. Proud of his patience, proud of how he hadn't let fear overwhelm him. But then the sweat began to bead on his forehead again, and my heart sank. We had another day to survive, and the air outside the car was no kinder than yesterday. I pushed open the door and stepped out, hoping for a breeze, but the air was heavy and still, thick with the smell of asphalt warming under the sun. My mouth was dry, my lips cracked, and my throat ached for water. We had a little bottle left, only half full. I unscrewed the cap and handed it to him first. "Drink slowly," I said. "Just a sip." He obeyed, though I could tell he wanted more. He passed it back to me, and I forced myself to take only the smallest swallow before capping it again. Every drop mattered now. Hours stretched on, slow and unforgiving. The car became unbearable, so we both moved outside, sitting on the curb near the shadow of the vehicle, though it was hardly cooler. The road was still empty, the town silent. It was as though the world had gone on vacation and left us behind. To keep his mind occupied, I suggested a game. "Let's pretend we're explorers," I said. "Stranded in some unknown land, waiting for a rescue team." His eyes lit up with the spark of imagination, even through the exhaustion. "Okay, then I'm the captain, and you're my co-pilot. We're on a mission to survive until help comes." We played along, weaving stories of adventure, giving our fear a new shape, something we could control. He laughed when I pretended to radio headquarters, tapping my wristwatch like it was a microphone. "This is Grandma, over and out." His laughter was music in the sweltering silence, reminding me of the child he still was, even in this moment of trial. But as the sun reached its peak, the game faded. The heat pressed down harder, smothering every ounce of energy. My grandson grew quiet, his movements slower, his cheeks flushed. I felt panic stir inside me. Heat exhaustion, I knew the signs, and they were creeping in. I pulled him close, fanning him gently with a folded piece of paper from the glove compartment. My mind raced for solutions. Should I walk into the town? Should I leave him here alone? Every option seemed dangerous. I couldn't risk him being without me, not even for a moment. So instead, I held him, whispered soft words, and prayed under my breath. "Please, God, just send someone. Let someone find us." He looked up at me then, his eyes half-lidded but steady. "Grandma, you're not scared, are you?" I paused, my throat tightening. "I am," I admitted softly. "But being scared doesn't mean giving up. It just means we keep holding on, even when it's hard." He squeezed my hand, his little fingers warm and damp. "Then I'll hold on too." That single sentence filled me with a strength I didn't know I still had. In that moment, it wasn't about me protecting him, it was about us protecting each other. We were equals in this strange test of endurance. The afternoon dragged, each minute an eternity. The shadows barely moved, the world around us still empty. Once, in the distance, I thought I heard the rumble of an engine. My heart leapt, and I stood quickly, shading my eyes against the glare. But the sound faded, swallowed by the silence again. Disappointment washed over me, heavy and sharp. My grandson must have seen it in my face because he whispered, "Don't give up, Grandma. They'll come. They have to." His faith was stronger than mine, and I clung to it like a lifeline. By evening, the sun softened again, and with it came a kind of fragile peace. We sat side by side on the curb, watching the sky turn golden. He leaned against me, his head resting on my arm, and I wrapped my other arm around him. For a moment, despite everything, I felt grateful for the closeness, for the reminder that love can carry us even when nothing else can. But in the back of my mind, one thought lingered: another night was coming. And I didn't know if we had the strength to face it again. The second night came with a different kind of weight. The air wasn't as stifling as the night before, but our bodies were weaker, drained by the long hours of heat and thirst. My grandson curled close to me, his breathing shallow but steady. I could feel the rise and fall of his small chest against my side, and I held on to him as though my arms alone could shield him from everything. The sky outside was a blanket of stars again, endless and indifferent. I whispered stories to him, half to keep him calm and half to keep myself from crumbling. Old memories, tales from my childhood, even little family secrets I had never thought to share. His eyes stayed open, listening, soaking it all in. Maybe he understood that in that moment, every word mattered. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke to the faintest sound, a low rumble in the distance. My heart skipped. I sat up quickly, straining to listen. There it was again. An engine. Real, alive, growing louder. I shook my grandson gently. "Wake up, sweetheart. Do you hear that?" He blinked, rubbing his eyes. Then his face lit up with something I hadn't seen in 2 days, hope. "Yes. Grandma, it's a car." We scrambled out of our oven-like prison and onto the road, the gravel biting into my shoes as I waved both arms high into the air. Headlights appeared, cutting through the darkness, growing brighter with each passing second. My heart pounded in my ears. "Please don't pass us by," I whispered. "Please see us." The car slowed. Relief hit me so hard I nearly collapsed. A man rolled down his window, his voice cautious but kind. "Are you two all right? What are you doing out here?" The words tumbled from my mouth, shaky but desperate. "Our car broke down. We've been here since yesterday afternoon. Please, can you help us?" He stepped out, a sturdy man in a plaid shirt and dusty jeans. He looked at my grandson, then back at me, his expression softening as the reality of our situation sank in. "You've been out here all this time?" I nodded, tears burning my eyes. I hadn't allowed myself to cry until that moment, but the floodgates opened. My grandson clung to my hand, his own eyes wide but calm. The man called someone on his phone. He had signal, something I hadn't seen since we'd arrived. Within an hour, another truck pulled up, bringing water, a tow, and the kind of rescue I had almost stopped believing I'd end as we drank that first bottle of cold water. My grandson looked at me with a smile that was tired but full of something deeper. "See, Grandma? I told you someone would come." And he was right. His faith had been stronger than mine. By the time we were safely back on the road, the ordeal behind us, I couldn't stop thinking about what those 24 hours had meant. Yes, they had been frightening, exhausting, and painful. But they had also stripped everything else away. No phones, no distractions, no noise of the world pulling us apart. It had been just us, facing something bigger than ourselves, holding on to each other when there was nothing else left. I realized then how rare that is, in a world full of constant motion. Rare to have the silence, the stillness, and the raw truth of survival with someone you loved. My grandson fell asleep against me as the tow truck carried us out of that forgotten town. I watched his face, soft in the glow of passing streetlights, and I knew this was a memory that would never leave me. Not because of the fear, but because of the bond it had carved between us. Sometimes, life doesn't give us the moments we want. It gives us the ones we need. And for me, those 24 hours in a hot, broken-down car with my grandson became one of the most important lessons of my life. It taught me that love is not just in the easy days, the birthdays, or the holiday dinners. Love shows itself in the hardest places, in the sweat, the fear, the silence, and the choice to keep holding on together. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this: you can lose almost everything, but if you have someone by your side who refuses to let go, you still have enough to make it through.